Welcome to the Pantheon.Plus Rewind.
Hey everybody, Minus here, and welcome to episode 33 of The Rewind. This is a show where every week we cover various topics about Pantheon Rise of the Fallen as we sort of look through not only what the official developers are talking about through their Twitter or through various newsletters or whatever information we can find a way to get. But we also dig into the community. We look at what they're talking about on the forums, Reddit, all kinds of Facebook. I mean, we really try to dig into the community and figure out what's going on. What are we talking about? What as a community, because we include ourselves in that community. What are we talking about? What are we passionate about? And how are we reacting to the news? And that's what the Pantheon.Plus Rewind here is all about. So without further ado, I do this show every week with my co-host, who is my right-hand man, the one who keeps me sometimes out of trouble, but then as I saw last week, actually sometimes gets me in trouble. The one everybody likes on the Rewind, Theric. How are you doing, Theric? How has your week been? What's going on over there?
It's good, man. I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes I keep you out of trouble, but I try to do both. I try to keep it in balance. But no, I'm doing really well, actually. I'll tell you a funny story about this week. We have a dog. He is a miniature Australian Shepherd. His name is Reno. And he had to go to the vet last weekend for like a dental cleaning. Like, not a big deal, but they have to put him under. When they did that, they discovered he had a couple cracked teeth that needed to get pulled. So they went ahead and did, and it's not, it's not a big deal. He was fine. He came out of it, no problem. But what it means is he can't have like hard toys to chew on. He can't have like crunchy stuff to eat, and I can't like play with him like tug of war and that kind of stuff. So it's been a week of trying to creatively find ways to entertain a dog. And if you know anything about Australian Shepherds, they're super smart. And he knows that we feel bad for him, right? He's leveraging that pity to get extra treats that he can have, right? So anything he can get his hands on, and he just plants himself, and he knows he can get nonstop scratches, if he's sitting in the right spot, because we're sympathetic to his situation. But he's almost healed up. He'll be, I think he gets his last meds tomorrow, and then he's can be back to gnawing away on his favorite bone soon enough. But so that's pretty much what my week's been, is trying to keep a dog that's way too intelligent for its own good entertained.
That's awesome. That's great. That's actually, no, man. Happy to jump into another week with you here. Excited for some of the news we're going to cover. So without further ado, let's get to it, because it's been a long week for me. This is going to be a long upcoming month for me. It's going to get pretty crazy coming up pretty soon with my work. So yeah, it's going to be miserable. So I'm going to enjoy this moment.
Yeah, definitely soak in the enjoyment of the Pantheon talk, because you need a little respite.
Yep. All right, let's get going.
Yeah.
This week in Visionary Realms news and notes.
All right, so in this segment, we talk about what VR is talking about. We try to look into any roundtables, dev streams, newsletters, fun tweets that they send out, or even sometimes things that we find in Discord where they're kind of engaging and talking with the community openly. This week, we have two things to discuss. And the first one is actually the producer's letter that was put out on the 19th from Ben Dean. So I wanted to go through like a little bit of pieces of that in my own words, sort of paraphrasing it. And Theric, of course, as always, please feel free to jump right in. Mm-hmm. So first, I wanted to once again congratulate Nefel. For those that don't know or haven't seen yet or didn't read this newsletter, he is officially with the VR team. Nefel will be labeled as an associate game designer, focused on, implementation of crafting systems is really what he's going to be doing within Pantheon. So he's going to be working very heavily with the other designers. I know he's going to be working pretty heavily with Convo, who's awesome, who's been around forever. Anyone who knows Nefel knows his passion for crafting, and he has a ton of experience with these systems across many MMORPGs. But most importantly, I think the two MMORPGs that he has some testing experience, he helped in feedback phases and alpha and beta on, was Star Wars Galaxy and Vanguard. And while I didn't play either of those games extensively, the one thing I always hear about them is that people constantly talk about their crafting systems, like constantly. That's a good sign for me anyway. So congratulations, Nefel. Good luck in designing these systems. The last thing I'll say about it is we've had some people in our Discord server say, hey, is Nefel still with Pantheon.Plus? We realize, Nefel and us, obviously all realize if he's with VR, we don't want there to be any kind of confusion. We're not official. Pantheon.Plus is a fan-made community. And we know that with him being there, he's going to have a lot to work on. So as this news came to pass, obviously we do separate as partners in business, so to speak, if you want to call it that. But we'll never separate in being great friends. And on top of that, we've made a commitment to him to make sure that Pantheon Crafters lives on the Pantheon.Plus website. So pretty soon, hopefully, we're hoping by the end of January, you'll see all the forum implementation and all the posts from the old site up on Pantheon.Plus. We're really working hard to make sure to keep that spirit alive, and a lot of people who helped him work on that site. So, no harm, no foul there. Do we miss Nefel being part of our team? For sure. But you know what? He's on to a bigger, more important thing right now, and we couldn't be happier for him. So.
Yeah, I just say huge congrats to Nefel. When I first started following Pantheon and I was looking on the forums, his posts always stood out to me, and I was always impressed by his posts. And he, I don't reach out to people directly like on Twitter or anything like that all that much, because I just don't like, I don't want to bother people, but I felt like Nefel was one of those people that I just needed to tell him, like, I really like your stuff. I like your posts. I think they're always insightful and they're really cool. So I DM'd him on Twitter and that kind of thing. And we started a sort of a friendship, just sort of a few comments here and there. And then we got to know him further through when he was on Pantheon.Plus U to talk crafting. And it's been great knowing him. I feel like it's so cool that I know this guy who's now an employee of VR. So I love that. And just congrats, man, and all the best. And I can't wait to continue to, hear what you do for the crafting. They couldn't have a better guy in there for the crafting stuff.
Yeah. And we will say, though, I'm really good at annoying the devs and hopefully getting exclusives or some info we can share, in a very good way. So now we just have one more that we can really annoy well. So
yeah.
Nefel, help us with those exclusives, right? So
that's right. Exactly.
All right, so let's go ahead and move forward into what Ben was talking about in this letter. He did note that the developer streams are going to be slightly moved. So from this point, they're going to take, and afterwards, after they're both moved, they're actually going to keep the first week of every month date now. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's going to move. The December stream is going to, this moves the November stream to December 3rd. And then the December stream is going to be January 7th. And then from there on, it'll just be the beginning of every month. So we kind of miss a stream, but obviously that's how it's going to be. That's holiday, right?
Yeah.
So we got some info on what to expect on the next one. So Jared Pullen, who's a senior concept artist, will be on the show to show off some of his work in progress art. And they're hinting at us seeing some new creatures that are going to be in the World of Terminus. That's always exciting. But they tossed a little line in the end there that we're going to see some Pantheon gameplay as well. So I'm pretty excited for that. I don't know what you picked up or what your thoughts are.
Jared's sort of like, in terms of the devs that I am the most familiar with after Jan Gerhardt is Jared, because they work so closely together. And I've done videos where I've used so many of his quotes and his concept art to sort of show things, right? And he's so detailed in that stuff. Like I remember the Halfling video or the Halfling Wild's End video that I did. I was looking at little details of his concept art. So whenever Jared comes on and they're going to talk some detail, that's what you're going to get. I love that stuff that he brings to the table. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a good one. From there, Ben got into sort of a state of the game and their work on what they're calling their evaluation build. So this build is not only to help achieve their mission they set forth with Project Fairthou in general, but it's a way to give them a way to present the core concepts and spirits of the game. And they even gave a date. I don't know if you saw that.
I did, yeah.
They never give dates. If anyone is just starting to follow Pantheon, if you've been following Pantheon, you know that. They said the evaluation build has a goal set of being finalized January 2021.
That is less than 2 months away.
That is a huge statement. So obviously this evaluation build is going to be important for business and investment side to bring Pantheon to life. That's a huge part of it. So I'm really excited to see where they're able to complete it, what they're going to put into that to consider that state finalized. And they stated over the next two producers' letters, we're going to get more updates on the status of this build. I don't want to get crazy with this, but they do slightly talk about alpha as of late. There's been
that's what I was going to say too. Yeah, I was going to mention that they used the A word quite a bit in this one, and the good A word. They said alpha, as this evaluation build is what's going to lead to alpha. That's crazy.
Yeah, and to think that they're saying this evaluation was going to be finalized, like this is like, I know some people may hear this like, why is that a big deal? VR doesn't do this. This is very out of character to say, here's our goal, right? Like a date goal. That's a really big deal. I think this could be something really big. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up. I don't want to say alpha is coming, but it feels very close if this is what they're saying. So
they don't say it lightly. They don't make these kind of statements like if they could have by now, they would have, right? People hound them enough and they get pressured enough to give dates and they never do. So this means something.
A big deal. And then finally in the letter, we got into the PA5 concept itself, and Ben just kind of went into some great data. He said it was good. They gained a lot from the testers in the October sessions, and it's helped them a lot with their overall NPC combat procedures and actions. They nailed down a lot of reported bugs, NPC movement, combat, obviously thanks to the reports submitted by the testers. So good job, testers. Finally, Ben announced that the next play session will be December 5th and 6th. And their focus on this test is class feedback and how they play. That's exciting. I think testers are going to enjoy that greatly. The featured classes will be the same that we'd seen in the previous PA5 session: Dire Lord, Shaman, Wizard, and Rogue. Now, the only thing I was a little caught off guard here is I was expecting some enchanters mentioned there because in that developer roundtable, Kyle was like, yeah, it's ready, right? It's in there.
Yeah.
So Theric, do you think we're going to see that enchanter and they're just not ready to talk about it, or any thoughts? Or what do you think?
I my optimistic person inside me says yes, says they might sneak it in as like a surprise for Christmas, like an early Christmas present. But then again, don't get your hopes up. They didn't say that. I don't know. Hard to say. I would like to see, because it would make sense with what they've said before about bringing classes online, over the course of the PA sessions that are going to be happening. So it kind of fits in with what they've said. I think there will be some disappointment if we do just see the same 4 classes. Not disappointment maybe, but more like, oh well, sort of thing. I'd love to see a new class in there just to play around with it. But if they do put a new class, and the problem is everybody's going to play that class, there'll be no rogues, dire lords, shaman, or wizards running around. It would just be all whatever the new class is, if that's enchanter or what. But hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of the overall producer's letter?
I liked it. I liked that it came, not too far off the last producer's letter. I like that, like you said, they gave some dates. It was short and sweet to the point. It wasn't long and rambling. There was quick. The information was concise. I think we're moving forward. Feels like we're moving forward. So that's the vibe I got.
Yeah, it definitely does. One of the biggest things they've been talking about is how we're really moving faster with development now. So everything's kind of playing into that a little bit, right?
Yeah. And everybody knows that we're in pre-alpha testing from the video that we showed. So things are looking good. My plans for early December are shaping up.
All right. So let's go from the serious topic of that letter to maybe the least serious community debate that has ever been presented on Twitter. The community debate. Sometimes Twitter gives us a gem and there's stuff we can really dig into and it's a lot of fun and it's deep. And then sometimes they give us a gem that I don't understand how they did it. And this might be one of those. So the community debate is, who wins in a fight? A snake that kicks or a chicken? I just have to imagine when Kilson was writing that he was laughing at himself while he's posting it. So as we always do, we're going to read through some of the comments here. And don't take this any more serious than you need to. So Breakout, who's been featured a few times on here, says neither. Snake is dead because it has the audacity to come in the yard where my kids play. Chicken is dead because those same kids need to eat. Long story short, my kids win. Very interesting take. The combat actually occurs in Breakout's yard. I don't know, where did this chicken come from? Is he on a farm? Like, where did this chicken just wander into his yard?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the snake is more concerning. It's in his yard, like what kind of place is he living where snakes are wandering around?
Well, snakes are all over the place up north, but there's many people who've had a snake in their yard or garden. where the heck have you ever seen a random chicken show up in someone's yard?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I can't say that I've had a random chicken in my yard ever, but Breakout's, he's dad of the year here. His kids are cleaning up with this stuff. So good for him.
Moving on to Nathan Napalm, he said the snake kick is supernatural, and to get the full set of their boot drop, you'd have to get it twice with a very low drop rate. So the chicken can try to farm the snake, but the snake will prevail.
Nathan's a master of the snake kick.
Yeah.
He's done it in his videos with those puppets, man. That snake kick that he does is pretty strong.
Kick of the snake. Yep. A Pity says they always reference a one-legged man in an arse kicking contest as being at a disadvantage. But even so, I think a no-legged snake in a chicken eating contest still prevails. The chicken may seem to win, but when the monk snake fiends death, but the flying kick will end it.
There's a lot going on there. I'm trying to envision this scenario. I can't even picture in my mind. I got a one-legged man kicking. I got chickens with no legs.
We need Nemufe to make a comic strip of this battle. That's what we need.
Yeah, exactly.
Basgrim jumped in. He said a kicking snake, obviously. A non-kicking snake could beat a chicken, LOL. Chickens can't really do anything. But a kicking snake, even I'd be afraid to take one of those on. Pizzazz says chicken would F a kicking snake in a heartbeat. That thing would peck the living hell out of it, peck its eyes out. he's a chicken fan.
Oh yeah. You know what? I think he's involved in some sort of cockfighting arena or something like that. It sounds like he's seen some real violent chickens in his lifetime. Yeah. Going for blood.
I love Nefel here. Nefel says it depends. Did the snake kick the chicken? Because we've all probably experienced what happens when you go around kicking chickens. And the best response ever from Nathan Napalm. Ooh, good point. My video game history tells me that kicking chickens ends poorly for the chicken kicker.
That's poetic. I love that. Even they're both right. Kicking chickens is definitely got some video game history to it. But then again, so does kicking snakes. So I don't know. The debate goes on.
Yeah, JJ says the chicken. I have learned that if you hit a chicken enough times, it will call for backup.
We're all Zelda traumatized. Yep.
Krituk says clearly the snake. It's been working on the hidden art of snake fu, a secret martial arts form utilizing the mythical spirit legs of Snakeborn.
Ooh,
people are having fun. Maybe too much fun with this topic, but having fun. So Nathaniel James says, all a chicken needs to do is taunt the snake into the road. We all know chickens love crossing them, and just keep it there until a cart or carriage runs it over. So then I kill the chicken, I eat the chicken, circle of life, he says. So what road is this snake chicken fight happening that a cart or carriage is coming? And what year did this happen?
This is a western town of some sort where this is going on. This is there's
on the Oregon Trail. This is on the Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. If you eat the chicken after this, you're going to die of dysentery. That's what I'm pretty sure is going to happen. So
that's good.
Kath Clark says chicken would win. My mother had a scar on her face from an angry chicken that flew at her. Look at their claws. Beware the dinosaur traits lurking under their fluffy feathers and innocent clucking at your peril.
They got real life experience to testify to it. You can't argue with that.
No, I was going to say the same thing. Real life experience. That's rough. Charles says chicken. I've never seen a level 1 chicken.
Level 1 chicken.
I started thinking about that every MMO. I don't know if I've ever seen a chicken at level. You always see level 1 snakes to kill. Bats, snakes. True. Always.
It's true.
This one's Sheepedy Gaming. He put 2. So first he put, a picture and stuff. He said, don't chickens normally explode in video games? Boom, chicken bomb wins. And then he actually replied to his own thing. He goes, oh wait, maybe that means it's a tie.
Chicken bombs, eh? That sounds like something you'd stuff into a cannon and fire them off or something.
Yeah, kamikaze chicken. Yeah. Blue Dragon TV, the last one here, he says chicken. Because if video games have taught me anything, you don't attack chickens. # Zelda, # Skyrim.
Skyrim, yep. Yeah, no, that's it. The chickens have the history with Zelda, and everybody knows that if you go around attacking chickens, they gang up and they come back and they get you. A lot of Nintendo games actually do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and be honest, my take on this here, because this is really, really important. This is going to go down in history as one of the most important things I have a take on. I've never seen snakes team up ever. Snakes are always like solo creatures. Chickens, I mean, I posted the video. Remember that little boy running around screaming and the chickens, like there's like 100 chickens chasing him and he's screaming with the bag of chicken feed. I mean, that's terrifying. One chicken alone, maybe that's not a huge issue. But I've never seen snakes team up. They seem to be kind of solo independent creatures. And I got to think the chicken's getting back up.
That's an interesting take. It's an interesting take because you might be right. Okay, I'm going to try and convince you why you're wrong, though. I'm going to tell you why the snake kick wins here. We're going to do it arena style. So I'm going to give you my top 5 pop culture examples of the fiercest snakes and chickens you can find, right? And so we're going to put them in the arena and you tell me which one you think would win. Okay, so snakes. Number 1, got Solid Snake from Metal Gear. Okay, so these are not just necessarily snakes, actual snakes. Okay. Just people name snakes. So
yeah, that's fair.
Solid Snake's the original video game tough guy. Think about Jake the Snake Roberts.
Ooh, remember that's a good
Jake
one.
The Snake? WWF?
Do I remember Jake the? Of course I do.
I knew you would.
Damien was the name of his snake. Yeah.
Oh wow, you even know the name of his snake. Okay, we'll put Damien on the list then too. What about from The Simpsons? What about Snake from The Simpsons? Right? Accidentally fell onto a bullet one time. This guy's tough as nails. What about Kurt Russell's character in Escape from New York? I think his name was Snake.
I knew you were going that way. You can't go that way. Why? Metal Gear Snake is basically a complete copy of him. That's almost the same character.
That's true. That's a good point.
All right.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. But I'm going to go for Kurt Russell more because Kurt Russell's just a badass in every movie. I love Kurt Russell. And then the last one you'll like too, but Cobra Kai, right? It's not just one person. It's a bunch of badass teenagers and a washed up 80s dude, man. So
yeah, Cobra Kai is pretty badass. I'll give you that one.
Team Snake's looking pretty strong. Here's what Team Chicken has to offer. You got Foghorn Leghorn, classic Looney Tunes, Saturday morning. Okay. Not that scary.
Yeah.
They got that chicken from Family Guy that fights Peter Griffin all over the place, right?
Dangerous, unstoppable, unrelenting.
Pretty tough, but also can't beat Peter Griffin. So how tough is he, really?
Yeah, I guess.
You got the chicken from Astro Chicken in Space Quest. I know not a lot of people are going to get that one, but
I got
my Space Quest in there. Chicken Little, right? Famous for thinking the sky is falling. Like, who cares, right?
He convinced a lot of people that the sky was falling.
That's true. And I couldn't even think of a 5th famous chicken. So I'm sure some people in the comments will come up with something, but the damage is done, man. Team Snake. The snake kick wins. That's what I say.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have a lot of good chickens to think up either. The Family Guy chicken came to mind for sure. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, in Toy Story, didn't you have Chicky was tied to the other guy in the new Toy Story 4? So I think there was that.
Man. Yeah, that's right.
They were all right. They had that whole plan to team up and whoop that old lady's ass to take the keys off of her. Right. So, I mean, you did have that, but you did have a partner tied to him. But that's what I'm saying. Chickens, they don't come by themselves. Chickens are, numbers. It's like when you see that raid boss out in the open world, Theric, and you just send 7,000 level ones at him. If we all hit it for 1 point, it'll die.
The chicken Zerg? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, if you go StarCraft, like the chickens are the Zerg, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Never know. Maybe you're right.
I don't know if we'll ever have an answer to this question. This may go down forever as one of those things. It's like the chicken or the egg, or is it the snake versus the chicken?
Or the snake. Yeah, we'll revisit it later.
All right. Well, that's it for VR news and notes.
When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about. Okay, so we've got a fun one for the community discussion this week, and I'm really looking forward to going down this topic. It comes from the official forums at Pantheon.MMO.com, where it was posted by community member Tahoe. So they asked, do you have a defining moment when it comes to MMOs? Like a moment when you thought, I love this game, or this is my new main, or even just a mic drop moment that you remember. I think we've all had those moments, if we're MMO fans. So I think this is a really relatable topic. So here's what Tahoe said for his. They said, I had returned to EverQuest 2 when a friend from EQ1 had begun playing. I ended up choosing an Inquisitor, as I've always liked clerics. At level 28, I finally opened up the AA specs and became a battle cleric, which was much more fun than just standing back throwing spells. My defining moment was when we finally got to go up to the deep into Sanctum of the Scaleborn. It was one of the rooms that if you pulled poorly, you could get ads, and we did get ads, lots of them. Then it became a blur between like reactives and heals, back and forth. Somehow we lived, and everyone credited my heals. It was the first time I'd transitioned from like I was playing a healer, that mentality, to I am the healer. and that character was solidified as my main. So that was Tahoe's defining moment, and it's a good sort of sets the stage for what the other folks had to say here. We'll go through them. So Mordecai had kept it short and sweet, just said, pretty much the first time I played EverQuest in 1999, seeing other strangers, being helped and helping others. That's when I was hooked. I love what he says here. He says, it wasn't a scripted game anymore. That really is just like exactly hits the nail on the head, if you ask me. Fancy said, I played Rift when it first came out. I just gotten enough hit and dungeon gear to go on a raid with my parents killed. And I was outperforming the other healers almost immediately. One weekend we get to the raid boss that we hadn't been able to defeat yet. I was the last healer left with 2 DPSs trying to burn the boss down before the bombs went off. There was nowhere to move, and I stayed alive long enough to top the 2 DPSs off, and we killed the boss with 1 person left standing. Then I played Rift on and off for a couple of years, and there were plenty of more stories just like that. So Rift, it's nice to see somebody, some of the other games that we don't talk about all the time mentioned, and Rift is one of them. Unicron said, my defining moment was loading into Ultima Online for the first time, seeing someone run around town with a tamed greater dragon. Seeing that and knowing it was something I could eventually do got me hooked right from the start. I think that's a great point. It's like we've talked about before, when you see that person who's got the epic piece of equipment or just something that that is really like down the road you could eventually get. I like that too.
Yeah, the item, like seeing a cool item, like I remember lambent armor. Oh man, it made me make a bard. Yeah.
Yeah, seeing somebody with a tamed greater dragon would definitely do that for me too.
Yeah.
Valhalla said, eventually stepping out of Kino's Hills from Surefall Glade and seeing 2 guards, a campfire, a skeleton further away, and a pathway that led to Kino somewhere I didn't know about yet. Adventure, freedom to explore. I was and still am amazed these decades later. So Jothany said, this one's, okay, and I'm going to preface it by saying this one's a bit longer, but bear with me here because it's a good story. So Jothany says, my first MMO was Asheron's Call. Joining a guild involves swearing allegiance to one particular player. They became your patron, and you became their vassal. Patrons were expected to mentor vassals who were new to the game and benefited from receiving a trickle or a little bonus XP equal to a small percentage of what the vassal earned. I had no friends in Asheron's Call when I started, but soon made one and became the vassal. Many months later, due to my having much more time to play than my patron, I outleveled him. It wasn't terribly uncommon in the game, but it was a big accomplishment for me and my first defining moment in gaming. Then a year or 2 later, he had left AC for other games, and I expanded to playing characters on a PvP server in addition to the ones I'd started originally. One day, I met a newbie on the PvP server who turned out to be my old patron. He had decided to come back to AC and chosen to play PvP this time around. When he saw me, we happily reunited, and he joined my guild as my vassal, and the circle was complete, and thus I had my second defining moment.
That's really cool.
It's a pretty cool story. Gloth, he recalls his early levels in EQ, especially around Freeport. He says, I wandered the city trying to find the bank and ended up finding the docks instead. A boat actually moved up to the dock and I took it. I was amazed at this little detail. Then when I drowned on the other side, because it took me longer to load in than it took the boat to move and move me to drown, I was mad, but I was also intrigued that you could actually lose your stuff. It made the work I had done feel more meaningful, and thus I was hooked. But I was also scared, hopeful, mad, and intrigued at the same time. No other game has made me think that much just by going a short distance from one place to another.
That's so funny.
Mm-hmm. I've had that happen tons of times when the boat moved past faster than I could load in. Jobson says, my favorite moment is back in EverQuest 2. I was playing a monk since shortly after launch. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase what Jobson said here, but basically he talks about he wasn't getting accepted into any guilds because being a monk wasn't really needed, at least not as much as like an enchanter. So he sort of toyed with the idea of abandoning the monk and creating an enchanter just to sort of get into a guild. But then during a raid, he talks about the true power of a monk's ability being revealed. He says, in that moment, I knew how to break the game in unimaginable ways. I knew how to reset zones, spawns, reset fights, get anywhere, climb anything. I knew the ins and outs of my class to agree that only a no-lifer could. And I couldn't give that up and play the meta. I was a monk.
I love that. I love that so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finding that special ability that just makes you love that class, right? Love it. The last one is from Chroma, and they said, this is an easy one. I avoided buying EQ for quite a while, but eventually curiosity got the best of me. I created my first tune and I was running around in the common lands, ran into a little hut and closed the door. When I opened the door, I saw another player run by with a giant spider chasing them. I freaked out and I closed the door right away. That was it. I was hooked. I immediately called my brother, told him, and he went out and bought it the same day. And I played from 2000 to 2007, made a lot of incredible friends and fond memories.
That's funny.
That's pretty funny. Yeah,
There
just a
was
simple
some
little
huge
thing.
spiders in EverQuest.
Yeah, especially in common lands, man. I remember those giant spiders really well. Yeah, big furry suckers. Oh man, so for me, it's gonna be tough to top some of those moments, and I relate to a lot of that stuff. But for me, the defining moment was when I went. It was in EverQuest, so stepping into East Common Lands for the first time, and the reason is that the trip from to East Common Lands for me was coming from west to east, and it was a very like the zones along the way were very big. They were very quiet mostly. There weren't a lot of people. There were some in the Karanas where were populated, but then you get into like High Pass and there wasn't a lot going on. And Kithakor Forest was pretty quiet during the daytime. So they weren't heavily populated. And then you stepped into East Common Lands and the chat just blew up, right? You saw this, people buying this, wanting to sell that, wanting to trade. It was like all of a sudden you arrived in this place and it was like alive and it was different from other zones. It was just this beehive of activity. I remember seeing items listed that I'd never seen before. I'd never even heard of for ungodly amounts of money. I thought I'd probably never see, right?
Yeah.
And just, being a new, relatively new player, I just got enough copper to buy my basics like armor and a rusty sword or whatever. And then I saw somebody selling something for 10 plat and it blew my mind. When I got close enough to the tunnel, I saw these masses of players milling about. And I thought that is so cool, right? So it's a memorable moment, but why is it like defining, for me, it's because that's the essence of what a good MMO is, and people coming together and communicating and negotiating these outcomes, right? It wasn't efficient. It wasn't automated and not at all. But there was something special about that. And if it wasn't for like we weren't socializing for socializing's sake, we were actually still playing the game, right? We're trying to sell high for that piece of gear we got lucky on a roll on, trying to find a sweet deal for the final piece of armor that we need to finish the look or the set that we want, right? It took time and effort. And, as you know, sometimes people sat in East Commons for days, right? Just trying to squeeze out that one more plat out of their wares or whatever. But it's like a defining moment for me. And I love that. And I think that's what MMOs should sort of be about. But I know I'm sure you've got a good one here. What's your defining moment?
It's really funny because, and we've said this a few times, I don't pre-read your notes because I kind of want to be able to react naturally. So I don't like prepare a story. So as this came up, I'm like, okay, well, I got to start thinking of one. And I've told stories of like overcoming things as a guild. I could tell those again. Those are memorable moments. And it's funny though, because I started to think like around what are some things like that just really stand out to me. And it's funny because you just brought up this whole thing of like defining moment about people coming together. And I have a bunch of those and I would agree. But the two that really stand out to me are individual, like proving myself moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The first one was in Blade and Soul. That's one that came to my mind. There was this tower you could climb. It was really hard. And it was a solo and you had to fight like multiple mobs. You had to be able to CC and like, it was really challenging. And the end boss was just a nightmare. It was perfect or you're dead. And it was a long fight. And then you would beat that guy and there was another guy after him and you're like, oh crap. And that was even harder. And I played a summoner and the class was really strong. And again, I spent a ton of money. So I was well beyond where I should be in strength, but it was still massively hard. When I say you had to be perfect, like you wouldn't even believe how perfect. And it's a Twitch game. So it's not just standing there and being perfect. It's perfect movement. It's perfect timing. It's cooldowns being right, controlling, because in that game you controlled your pet. Like I had to attack for my pet. I had to do their abilities. I had to push the buttons to do it. So I was controlling myself while controlling my pet. It was just incredible experience. And I was the first one in our guild to down it. And I don't think many people downed it at all in our guild. Wow. And our guild was pretty good. I'm wondering if Haya ever ended up fully beating it, which is interesting to think. But it was crazy. The other one is interesting. So I was part of running a guild. I wasn't ever the leader, but I was co-leader type thing. And we were kind of equal. But me and a friend, a real life friend, led a guild in WoW. We were called the Freelancers. It was the first guild we made. I think we made it at the end of Vanilla. And we had it from then through BC, through Wrath of the Lich King, and through Cataclysm, I think was how long that guild lasted. So it was a pretty long lasting guild. And I quit World of Warcraft at the end of Wrath of the Lich King. I've had a few moments where I didn't play that game, where I left. And I left and I did not buy Cataclysm. So everyone was playing and I was off doing the life thing. And I ended up being like, you know what, I'm going to get it. Because I was working at GameStop and one of the stores had a spare collector's edition. I'm like, oh man. And those collector's editions for that game were sick.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to grab this collector's edition. I grab it. They're on the last raid is coming out. So I missed a majority of that expansion. Now, just because the last raid isn't out, there was still quite a bit of time to play still. Because, there's the lull period after the raids are done and the game's kind of done before the next expansion came out back then. So what happened is I come into the guild and I'm just a regular member and it's awful. Awful. The other leader left. They were handed over to these two people who were like, very casual, very like, oh, just let this person try. Like there wasn't much organization. They were friendly, nice people, but could not lead. And as soon as I logged in, I got just blasted with tells, please come take the guild back. Please come take the guild back. So I'm like, well, what's going on here? Right. So I come in and I find out that it's the last raid's there and they can't even clear the first one with gear that's better than the first raid. They couldn't get past the first raid boss of the first tier. And I think there were 3 tiers. So the third tier is coming out. They have gear from dungeons and stuff that's better than the raid they're in. They're overpowered. They can't clear the first boss. That wasn't like us. And I'm like, okay, so I came in and I'm going to openly admit it was a pretty hostile takeover. I told them we're not doing that raid. We're not doing the second raid. And we're going straight into the upcoming final raid, which was Deathwing. And everyone's like, how in the world are we going to go fight that when we can't clear the first fight? I said, because the next 2 weeks, we're going to learn how to play again. And we went on this tear of gearing up, getting people into the right stuff, teaching people how to play their classes. It was just this intense, like retraining of the guild. And they're like, oh, we're not going to be able to do this. We went in and we whooped the hell out of that last raid. And it was so satisfying because those other 2 people that were running the guild, they hated me because I came in and the guild asked for me to take it over. And I tried to be nice, but they wouldn't be. Like they were just being really rude. So I just went back at them. But it was funny because they're like, well, this is how it should be. This person should tank. I'm like, no, I'm tanking. I'm sorry. And all this stuff. And literally they're like, well, you're not going to be able to do it anyway. And we smashed it. And it was just this glorious moment of when the right people are there to help and push people to do their best, the enjoyment is amazing. And it was crazy. Like we skipped 2 tiers of raid content because they couldn't get the first one down and we cleared the last one. And that was a cool raid. The Deathwing raid was pretty cool. But it was like this triumphant comeback. And then like after we cleared it and it all died down, I actually left again because I really wasn't into the whole panda thing at first. So those were the 2 times that I had taken the most time off of WoW until I quit after BFA. But it was just an interesting moment to bring this group of people that I was so close with, I hadn't talked to in a while, bring us all back together, get us back on track, and do something that none of them thought we'd be able to do. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example of a defining moment, I think, because that's what, for you, MMOs are about bringing people together to overcome insurmountable achievements, right? And over, and leading people and realizing that you can do so much more as a group than you can alone, right? And it's kind of funny, those 2 stories sort of put beside each other because one is a story where you're alone and you're doing it by yourself. And the other is a story where you're doing the same thing, but with a group of people that you took on.
And so I'm not going to lie either. Like there was that ego piece of both of those, right? Like there is that sense of like, if I say I'm going to do it and I do it, I'm not going to say I'm sitting there sticking my chest out, acting a fool, but internally I'm definitely sticking my chest out,
well, you did it.
You said I couldn't and I did. So in your face type of thing,
Well, that's human nature, right? And if somebody tells you can't do something, that just makes you want to do it all that much more, right?
So true.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Okay, so from there we will do introductions. We didn't have any last week, but we got 3 new ones, 3 new members of the community this week over on the forums. Stop by to introduce themselves, so that's good. The first one is Severe, spelled with 2 S's. He says, I played EQ on Terrathul server and was in 2 guilds, Hands of God and the Arisen. Having since played many other MMOs like WoW, Guild Wars, Rift, and finally, as a huge Tolkien geek that I am, I settled into Lord of the Rings Online, which I played pretty much until free-to-play crushed its soul. later caught on board with ESO, pretty much soloed to max, but gave up because found the social group element of that game was not great in my experience. Having been following Pantheon for a while now, thanks to Nathan Napalm and Basgrim, not trying to write a book, so just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to grouping and exploring with Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, and likely play a dwarf paladin, although who knows. I like his sign off too. He says, "Sincerely yet sarcastically yours, Severe." So it's a good sign off.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Next up is Pirate-esque. They say another diehard EQer has arrived on the shores of Pantheon. Apart from all my previous role-playing experience being D&D Traveler Aftermath, I'm not sure what that is, just a D&D module, I guess. My first steps in the digital world was with EverQuest in 1999. Fell in love with the harsh conditions of it, and especially that you had to be careful not dying to reach in hard-to-reach places. Been following Pantheon for a while based on recent decisions by the dev team, decided to hop on board. So he says, some people mistake me for being French since I use the name Pirate-esque, but I'm actually from Sweden, so well met. and then the last one is from somebody I was actually talking to on Discord this week about our mutual love of playing guitar. We were reminiscing about learning to play Megadeth tunes back on the guitar and on bass for me, but Daniel is his name. He goes by DB as well. He says, hey all, how's it going? I haven't poked through the forums through a while, so it's nice to see some new info and some people. Played EverQuest a couple years on and off back around 2001, though I got to dabble in 99 on a friend's computer. It was a pretty special experience for me. The marriage of two passions, D&D and video games. It wasn't in the cards to keep up the MMO lifestyle, so there's like a 12-year plus break between before I jumped into anything else. And he actually talks about one that I haven't heard brought up before. It's a mobile MMO called Order and Chaos. Actually, Order and Chaos 2 is the one that he cites. He learned about playing, what pay to win is and other new things from that experience. But had a wonderful time making friends and being an active officer in the guild. So that's kind of encouraging to hear. He says, I'd like to engage more with the community and get to know some folks around here. Total limbo about main character. Figure there's no rush though, so could have some time on his hands. Anyway, good to meet you, Daniel, aka DB. So yeah, welcome Daniel, welcome Pirate-esque from before. And that's it for this week's community discussions.
Let's talk content creator updates and new additions to Pantheon.Plus.
Right, awesome. So let's talk about some of the stuff that's been added to Pantheon.Plus. We kind of skipped this section last week because we had a lot to talk about last week, and we got, mine is all fired up, and that's what happens. So a little more chill week this week. I'm okay with that after 2 crazy rewinds.
Yeah, we needed a break.
Yeah, we did. Okay, so let's talk about the content added. So Basgrim released a video discussing the tools that Pantheon team has been using to build the world. So these details were first highlighted in the stream with Torque, talking about how they'd be using Houdini to populate the world with textures and topography in a way that easily could complete or at least get zones to near completion quickly. So in this video, he'll talk more in depth on that and a couple other tools. So if you're excited by that developer stream and you kind of want to learn a little bit more, Basgrim has you covered, so check that out. He also put out a Baz Flash that recapped the letter that we talked about above, and also a Baz Flash for Nefel being announced. So a couple quick videos and then that one there. Nathan continued work on his class videos this week, highlighting the Summoner class. He's done a really great job on these videos, adding his own flavor, charm, and discussing the class's featured abilities. Just kind of talking about how he thinks the classes would play. We've talked a few times about the fact that he's really knowledgeable about role-playing games and fantasy and MMOs. So just kind of nice to get his perspective on how some of these things work. Here's excitement. I just really like it. It's fun. So the other thing that I really wanted to talk about is we've talked a little bit about articles. But I just wanted to give kind of a quick update on it because I think it's been going really well. I'm really excited with what we've seen so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes from there. If you're listening to this right now and you like to write, get on there, write something. But so as of right now, Tech Ninja posted an opinion article on the presence of languages within MMO. Got a lot of good feedback on that. Ben and I, who we talk about pretty often on this show, posted a fan fiction conspiracy theory about King Avendir. Questioning if his noble presentation is perhaps hiding something more sinister. I kind of really dig that. He's a great writer. So.
Yeah, I love his stuff, man. That piece he posted is so fun to read. And He's got a whole backstory behind it. And if you want to know more, if you want to read more Benonite stuff, it's all over on the forums at Pantheon.MMO.com as well. But having him post that on Pantheon.Plus on the articles is fantastic. So that's awesome.
Drac and JJ both posted articles discussing how Brad MacLeod had impacted their lives, remembering him on the unfortunate anniversary of his passing. But memory is always good, having the memories there and talking about the impact. So really cool personal stories from both of them. And I posted an article. I don't know how often I'm going to write. To be completely honest with you, I write very conversationally. I write very script-like because of all the scripts I do for the rewind, or if I'm going to make a video, or if I'm just completely off script, just talking. I'm a much more of a talker than I am of a writer. So I'll apologize first and foremost, because if you read my article, it probably comes off more like I'm talking at you than writing in a letter or a article.
Yeah, but that's not the worst thing. That's kind of nice. It's kind of a change up, and I like the way you write. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. It is more conversational, but it's different, and it's kind of nice to see a different style of writing once in a while. So I like, and that article is fantastic. You should write more. Don't stop doing articles.
Well, anyway, in the article, I kind of talked about the value of my Pantheon pledge and what it meant to be part of the Pantheon community. It's kind of tying those two things together. I get a bit personal in this article, and if anyone knows me, I'm not afraid of being personal and talking about like how we got here and stuff like that. But I think it's really important to kind of paint the picture of why I'm so energized by Pantheon and willing to kind of put my faith behind the project. So hopefully if you get a chance to read it, you do. And at least maybe if you're one of those people, it's like, Minus is just a white knight, or Minus is just so positive. Maybe it'll give you a little idea as to why I'm so positive. I would disagree that I'm a white knight. I fight quite a few things that you guys are not very happy with. And if I was a white knight, I wouldn't do that. But it at least give you some insight into some of the stuff I've gone through and what this game means to me and the connections I've made. So pretty cool. So again,
the only other thing I'll say on that, yeah. Because you mentioned, being positive all the time, so people think that's a negative. That's not, you're very in touch with what you're doing and what you're feeling. And that's nothing to be, nothing wrong with that. That's something to be admirable. So keep writing. They're good.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. But if you would like to submit an article, it's easy. Okay. Here's how you do it. It's simple. Just log into the site, click the hamburger menu. If you don't have an account, make one. It's quick. Just check for an email to come to verify your account. It might take a couple minutes. And then click the button in the hamburger menu that says My Articles. It's in that same menu. And it just gives you an opportunity to write it. You can upload an image for your thumbnail. You can title it. You can select tags for it. You can throw your article into an editor. You can edit the text, the colors. You can upload pictures into it. Just make sure you save it. And then once you're ready to submit it, you submit it off to us and we'll reach out to you probably. So reach out to us on Discord or something like that, or Twitter when you write an article, because once we approve it, it'll go live. So we want to make sure, it's ready. And if you have any questions and stuff like that. But, as long as it, past us just checking it out, making sure it's right for the site and it's not just full of craziness, you're probably going to be good to go. So we're really excited to see what's coming. Like, I'm really pumped about, this burst of articles we've had already. I mean, keep in mind, this just debuted on the 31st of October, and there were some bugs we're working out still, and there's probably going to be some more, but it's been really cool. And it's really it's adding so much more community to the site, because not everyone has time to produce videos and stuff. It's way more complicated. And I think that articles are just as important, just as entertaining. And I think there's a crowd that likes them even more than videos. So, if you're a community member who wants to be a part and share stories and share your opinions, I think it's a great tool, and we really hope you check it out. So
definitely. Sit back and relax. It's time for The Lore You Know. Okay, so this week we ask, what is the Dragon Accord? On its face, the Dragon Accord is a document, ostensibly created by the dragons which used to inhabit Terminus. It's written in the language of Drac Elrin, one of several dragon tongues, but the most elusive of them all. The lore described it as a fortified speech overburdened with enchantment, and a language of unparalleled arcane encryption, which was used by the Dragon King himself. But as we learn from the keepings of Castigue, it's imbued with such magic that can actually transform itself into various configurations in an attempt to befuddle any attempts to copy it, and it's also impervious to damage. So that's to say it doesn't behave as a written document should. But what do we know of the purpose of the Dragon Accord? What does it serve? What purpose does it serve? This question is the substance of Nerian Cassigu's venture into the frost regions where Talnarsis, the snow dragon, lives. And the Lord tells us that when he asked for assistance, Talnarsis suggests the dragon accord is the recording of the reigns of his kind, or a collection of speeches, or even still a fantastical story. But Nerian challenges this. This is what he says. He says, the parchment we have, or I have, appears to be a copy of an ancient agreement. We've been calling it the Dragon Accord, and we believe it to explain something of why our peoples have come to inhabit Terminus. With this, Talnarsis attempts to view the document, but then is prevented from doing so by Kazas, the Dwarven High Mortal that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and the encounter comes to a volatile end very quickly. Nerian's questions remain unanswered. So, is the Dragon Accord a pact between dragonkind and the deities of the races of Terminus? Or is it something beyond, which was imposed upon the dragons? Will it ever be fully translated? If nothing else, the Dragon Accord holds one of the most fundamental secrets of Terminus, and we don't know what that is yet. And that's the lore you know. And with that, it's time to check the mailbox.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me wanna wag my tail. When it gets here, I just yell, mail! We're getting sued. All right, it's mailbox time. I love mailbox time, and I'm so thankful that we are able to do this every week, because if people didn't submit questions, we wouldn't be able to. So thank you guys. Yeah. It's always the Rewind channel and our Discord's always lit up. And I love the fact that questions will be asked and people want to get into answering it in the community too. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. So yeah, check out that channel if you haven't yet. Join our Discord. The links will be in the description below on our YouTube video. So put your questions in there. If we can't answer it, we'll try. I mean,
and we got some new ones, some new people asking questions this week too. It's exciting.
Yeah, I love it because the first one here, you've set me up for failure. Lepoff. Yeah. Like so they ask, what do you feel will be the hardest, most challenging race class combination? That's interesting. I'll start. Sure. I think that having an evil race is going to be the hardest for sure. And I think that, a class where you have to visit for spells often is probably harder. So like for me, my mind goes to like ogre wizard. Because like I want to say Scar because they feel like they're going to be the most hated, so it's going to be tough to play them. But like when you think of Scar, they're like warriors, rogue, like they're the savage type things. I mean, maybe a Scar monk like harkens back to the days of being an Ixar monk that was kind of challenging. But I'm going to go ogre wizard.
Good one. I kind of said the same thing because
can they be wizards?
Yes, I think so.
Or am I just thinking that because of PA?
So maybe. You're
all right, I'm scratching that. I'm going to go Scar Monk.
Yeah, well, I'll go with the safe bet, I guess. I said Ogre Druid, but the reason, and I know ogres can definitely be druids. But I was looking at the racial passives, and it's sort of easy to look at the racial passives and find the ones that don't really fit with the class, right? So ogre racial passives are more about attack rating and strength and stun resistance. And not really the kind of thing you think would be good for a druid. You could also, instead of looking at like the racial passives and going in from that direction, you could look at it from a different direction and say, I might say gnome rogue would be my second choice. And the reason is that it's the only melee class available to gnomes. And I don't think a lot of people are going to play gnome rogues because they, again, for the racial passives is one, although they do get a dodge advantage. So that's good for rogue class, but there might be a limited pool of knowledge like in the community in terms of like what to do as a gnome rogue. How would you play that? So that might be something that might make it more challenging, at least like in the initial like first while after launch kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the other one that came to mind for me, and this may seem weird to people, is the Dwarven Enchanter. I find that to be a very odd class.
Yeah.
Dwarves to me are a wisdom race, not an intelligence race. And I know that you can be both, but I always separate that. Like wisdom versus intelligence to me is always very different. And I feel like they're a wisdom class and a race. And I think that the enchanters, this intelligence class, it feels odd to me. I don't know why. It just feels really odd.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just about the feel of them, right? They just don't feel right together.
Yeah. And kind of what you said too about like the racials, like Dwarven racials don't really match up very well with the enchanters. So
it's true.
The next one here is from Grave Robber. They said, being a gamer and knowing issues with MMORPGs to date, moving forward, how would you change blank to circumvent issues? In doing so, keeping Pantheon on the straight and narrow path. You want to start?
Yeah, it's kind of a hard one because he doesn't really say specifically what the issues he's thinking of. He's sort of like assuming general knowledge of, but I mean, there are some that are, I would say, are generally known as the big issues. And one of those might be the idea that every MMO thinks they need to be the next big thing, right? If we're thinking about common issues, right? And that's how do we circumvent that, right? How do we stop MMO like Pantheon from trying to be everything to everyone? Because we don't want that. I think they've actually done a pretty good job of this, not to fall into this trap. So if we're talking about how to circumvent that, I think their strongest tool that they have is keeping those tenets front and center, both internally and externally as well. So on the website, I know that they're there under the FAQ. I think they should be more prominent. I've said that before. I think that draws a lot of people in, and it keeps this game from going down that path of we're going to be the next big thing. We're going to try and be something for everyone. It doesn't have to be about the biggest. It's just about staying true to itself. So I would answer that question that way.
I'm cheating. I'm using the answer that's in this question for the next question too, because I just realized it's tied together.
Okay.
So I'm going to jump into the next question. I'll tie these both together and I'll answer first. So JJ asks, when leveling up and gearing is essential, one of the most memorable aspects of MMORPGs is the reason we use those levels and gears, boss fights. While an open world might be challenging, it's not impossible to pull off some cool stuff. But what are some boss mechanics environments you would like to see challenge players? So the reason I'm tying this together is because I think that known issues with MMORPGs is the social side. And Pantheon's doing a really good job with open worlds, open dungeons, open raids, to have the world have its own social side. But one of the things I would challenge on, and it's been a huge topic lately, we saw Basgrim putting a ton of stuff out there. We talked about it in depth on Pantheon.Plus this week, was the fact that these boss fights, these epic raid boss fights, which maybe at launch, there's like 6 of them. We're not talking about a mass majority of things here, but I think it's the right way to use instancing, where instancing has been blown up to be just a crutch. I think that this is a way to very small segments of instancing can be used to pull its strengths out, developmental strengths, challenge strengths, while making it a tool to increase this aspect of the game while keeping everything else open world. So I'd really like to see instances on these epic fights, because one of the things I want to see is changing environments, the ground falling apart, being teleported in the middle of the fight, running through a portal to complete a side thing to get back to the boss fight to save your party, activating some kind of, environmental things that shut down the boss or shut down his ads, or just like all this cool stuff you could do that I just don't personally think you could effectively do in an open world fight. So that's kind of a combination of the answers for the two there. You like how I did that?
Yeah, that's good. It's good. I like how you tied that together. It's funny. Just before we started recording tonight, I was playing Guild Wars 2. I've started getting back into it. It's kind of getting its hooks back in me a little bit. And I just finished the boss. I did the boss fight for the Heart of Thorns expansion. And it was pretty cool. It didn't do anything groundbreaking. But I did find myself thinking about this question as I was playing it. And I think there's a lot of room for new and exciting design. I think that what's overdone in boss mechanics is multiple mechanics at one time. Like, I get that that's a way of increasing complexity, but there doesn't need to be 16 fiery circles on the ground, 10 vortexes of dark energy in front of me, and then like something overhead. Like, it gets too crazy. It gets to be too much. I think that there's room to grow in boss fight mechanics where it's like a singular mechanic that requires coordination amongst your group, like you were talking about. I think a lot of the things you were envisioning is sort of the same thing I'm saying, just sort of maybe looking at it from a group perspective in terms of, because Guild Wars 2, like, again, I was doing this by myself. This is a single player experience. At least this was. I think you can actually do this with a group, but I was doing this on my own. And I just felt that like it was overloading with things. And I don't know. I'm not a designer. If I really sat down and spent some time trying to design an encounter, I might be able to come up with something. But I think it's about less is more, maybe in this case is a good way of putting it.
And the final question here. Oh, this is fun. I get to answer these questions all with the same answer. And I legit mean it. It's not being lazy. Daniel, who we just introduced to the community. Hi, Daniel. AKA DB. VR has stated their intentions to make Pantheon enjoyable for players who have a limited amount of time to invest. Is this a realistic goal for an MMORPG? What are some ways this could happen, aside from some caravan ideas I've heard? I haven't heard much on this topic. Yeah, I mean, I'll say these are things that VR is very dedicated to. It comes up a lot when Joppa talks to people in Discord or on, interviews. It's a very important aspect. And how do we do it? Well, the raid boss fights have to be instance, and you have to be able to schedule with your guild to go play. If you can't schedule guild events because you have to wait and hope it's up, you kill the 2 to 3 hour time. It's dead. It's dead on arrival. The bat phone comes back. You can never schedule well. I mean, you can go to a dungeon and sit there and camp. You can do other things, but I think the heart of like guild play is these challenging, overcoming, kind of what we've talked about quite a bit on this episode, like overcoming these large challenges. And I think that it has to be something you can schedule for. I'm okay with open world dungeons. I'm okay with the raid itself being open world. I'm okay with open world bosses spawning randomly or on a timer. But I think there has to be things that you can schedule, travel together to, and go try to accomplish. Now, I'm not saying give any participation trophies out. Make it hard. Make it something. Just because you get an opportunity to do something doesn't mean you don't get your face pounded into the ground. But I think the opportunities do need to be there. And I think that's where that small bit of instancing can really help this idea as well. To just give a guild. I would rather die 1,000 times and not ever be able to beat a boss than to say I never got a chance to even try it. So. Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's funny. I think we have a very similar answer. I didn't talk about the instancing aspect of it, but I scheduling appears in the what I have written down for my answer here too. Is it's just how we live these days. We don't go down to the basketball court and wait for a pickup game to break out, anymore. That's not how we do things. When you're over the age of like 30, 35, whatever, it's about organization and scheduling, and I think that is really the key. And I think VR was aware of that. They've talked about so Daniel talked about the caravan idea. Now, this was something that had been brought up a while ago. The last dev roundtable that I heard that they mentioned the caravan concept, they said it won't be in for launch. It's not something that they're planning on having at launch. But they have talked about dungeons with safe spots along the way, right? If your group starts in a dungeon, there should be a spot, anywhere to hour and a half, 2 hours in where you can safely camp with your group for the night and carry on your journey the next night or whenever you want to continue.
Yeah, we actually saw that in Amber Fate, right? When they climbed up and there was that little like camp of the two characters. Yeah. And there was like fire there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's what I see in my mind too, when I talk about that. So yeah, I mean, it is about being organized and scheduling things, and like you said about the instancing aspect. I'm not 100% there with you there on yet, but we'll get there. Maybe some more discussion, but that definitely is, it definitely is something that plays into it. It's one of the reasons why, Pantheon needs to accommodate and needs to account for people not playing the way they used to. Like you said, the bat phone and all that kind of stuff. It's just not realistic anymore. And I think Daniel has a good question about this. It's a really good question. We talked about it quite in depth on a previous episode of the Rewind, as part of the community discussion there. And there's a lot of things to consider. So it's a good one.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up the mailbox. And with that, it wraps up today's episode of the Rewind. Theric, awesome show. Thank you for not triggering me and setting me up to get angry today. It was a pretty chill show today. I enjoyed it.
I'll do my best. I'll always do my best to either trigger you or not trigger you. There's no middle ground. It's either one or the other.
Oh, I'll accept that. Always doing your best is a good thing. But as always, thank you to the community for those articles. Thank you to the community for their questions. And thank you to the community for always coming and hanging out with us for these live ones and checking it out after the show, adding your comments, adding your feedback to some of these things we're talking about. It's a blast. We love it. Don't forget, if you want to listen to these shows on demand, you can check it out on YouTube. You can also download it, Spotify, iTunes. Check it out. Listen while you're in your car, driving to work, whatever you want to do. Hopefully we can help a little bit, get you through your day. But another great week, Theric. Thank you again. And thank you to the community. We're out.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. Be sure to follow Minus and all Pantheon.Plus related content on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube under the name Pantheon.Plus. Also, be sure to follow Theric at PantheonTheric on Twitter. Keep up to date on all Pantheon Rise of the Fallen information on www.Pantheon.Plus, the definitive source for all media of Pantheon. Until next time.